Oh, okay.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for coming out tonight to the first in the T. William and Patricia Ayers Global Tipping Point series, focused this fall on immigration policy and the stories behind it. We're really interested in having this three-part series to talk about immigration in a way that hopefully humanizes what is typically a demonizing conversation. We want to share stories about immigration. We want to share stories about how the policies that the U.S. government has benefits people, how it can create hindrances to people, and the important issues behind it. I'll keep my opening remarks short, but I would be remiss if we did not thank our sponsors and supporters for this series. That is first and foremost T. William and Patricia Ayers, longtime members, and their family, for providing us with a generous endowment gift, or quasi-endowment gift for this series to help make sure that it remains sustainable into the future. To the New Hampshire chapter of the Fulbright Association for their continued support of this work, and you'll hear from their president, Bill, in a moment. But also to our mission partner here, Southern New Hampshire University, for providing us with all the wonderful space and help in trying to figure out and make sure our live streams work well. So thank you to all of those groups and those people. Also thank you to all of our members and board members who are here tonight for all of the wonderful support you give to help make this happen. If you're not yet a member, we would love to invite you to join the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire. We are a community-supported organization. About a quarter of our budget comes from membership and annual fund, and so we are appreciative of those people who are able to give to help ensure that as many of our programs can be free and open to the public, because we view these as very important conversations that everyone should have an opportunity to hear and to engage with. That's also why we continue to do the live streams to ensure a strong sense of accessibility to our programs in a state that sometimes can feel very inaccessible when people are not necessarily willing to drive between Concord and Manchester. We are a nonpartisan organization, so we don't take any stances on politics, parties, candidates, all of that fun stuff, and in these days it's harder and harder to find those spaces to have these open conversations, but we invite challenging but respectful conversations here tonight. We will have an opportunity for some Q&A with our speakers, who I'll introduce in a little bit, but we want to make sure that this is an open forum. We are the platform for conversations. We aren't here to tell you how and what to think. With that, I'll bring Bill up to provide a little bit of background about New Hampshire Fulbright. Thanks, Bill.
Hi, I am Bill DeVries. I'm the president of the New Hampshire chapter of the Fulbright Association. The Fulbright Association is a nonprofit organization constituted to support the Fulbright program, which is the educational exchange program of the United States Department of State. The Fulbright program operates as a partnership between the United States and the local governments in over 160 different countries, the funding coming usually from both the U.S. and the foreign government, often in a 50-50 split. It's an exchange program, so there are roughly equal numbers of Americans going abroad and foreign citizens coming to the U.S. We have about 15 visitors to New Hampshire this year, for instance. There are a variety of different Fulbright grant opportunities: grants to conduct independent study abroad, grants to pursue research, a degree or a certificate at a foreign university, grants to teach English in elementary or secondary schools abroad, grants to teach at foreign universities, grants for civil servants or other citizens with special expertise to learn from other places how other places work and to teach them how we do things. Grantees are often young, and they're often just beginning to build a career, but there are many senior Fulbright fellows as well. So I want to encourage you to think about applying. You may think you're too old. You're not necessarily. But if you've got children, grandchildren, they should have it in mind. Principally, though, with this audience, I want to say this is a really important program that is one of the best diplomatic efforts the United States make. Probably the most successful single program the United States has. Tell your senators, tell your representatives, you want to support international understanding. That's the Fulbright program. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. I will have to probably fight you on that, though. That's the International Visitor Leadership Program, which the World Affairs Council runs. Is the most effective, but I guess since you're the sponsor, you can win tonight. All right, I wanted to introduce our two speakers for the evening. First, Bruno D'Britto is an immigration lawyer and immigrant rights activist. He is originally from Brazil, but currently calls Nashua home for the past several years. He's also the founder of the New Hampshire-Brazil Council that helps immigrants to the state and advocates for these people to receive the services that they need while they're here. Bruno, if you'd like to join us up here. And our second speaker is John Hakuzimana, who has over 12 years of experience in community development, advocacy, and communications. He's the founder and director of New Hampshire's SONGA and a deputy editor at Amhambo Africa, a newspaper covering issues facing immigrants and their host communities in Maine. Fortunately for us, he has decided to leave Maine and join us here in New Hampshire more permanently. But the most important thing I can tell you about Jean is you can hear his insights on the Kuungabon on the Global and the Granite State podcast, a program of the World Affairs Council of New Hampshire, as he joined us for this month's episode for some really insightful talks there. Originally from Rwanda, but now calls Manchester his home as of, 2 or 3 days ago? All right. Well, John, if you want to join us up here, you want to pull it out of the stand. All right, so tonight we are going to sort of focus more on a moderated Q&A. So I'll take the first couple of questions, but then we'll invite questions from the in-person audience and our online audience. That's why we'll be checking out the tablet to see all of the questions coming through. So if you are watching online, we have a chat function on our website. You can send it through there, through the YouTube chat function, or email us at council@wacnh.org. So, to start the conversation off, I'd just like to give you both the opportunity to talk a little bit about yourself, the organizations you run, and how you view sort of immigration in New Hampshire at this point. So, Bruno, why don't we start with you?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. My name is Bruno D'Britto, and I am originally from Brazil. I currently live in Nashua, and I am an immigration attorney and executive director of the New Hampshire Brazilian Council. I came to the United States a little over 16 years ago. Time flies. I came with the wish of becoming a truck driver. My father, when I was still in Brazil, he would tell me, oh yeah, truck drivers, they make $25 here. You're gonna make a lot of money. And, that stuck in my head. So I came to the United States, but all I wanted to do was, pursue the American dream. Until, I realized, what am I doing? Until, I realized I was, a high school dropout, pursuing an American dream. And, things, started going south because I never saw the money. I was working and never seeing the money. God had, bigger plans for me. And then one night I got pulled over. I was trying to decide what I was going to do with my life. And one night I got pulled over by this, a police officer. And he kept, yelling at me, telling me I was so dumb because I kept calling Hispanics Spanish. And I was like, what? I didn't even say anything. And, he's like going off. So that was, like the tipping point, deciding that, oh yeah, I'm going to become an attorney and I'm going to sue every police department around. So that was my goal until I actually got to law school. In law school, he started teaching that law is a beautiful thing. There is justice for all. But I knew it wasn't like that. So I started, studying a lot about psychology and holistic approaches on how to dealing with social issues. Instead of, suing everybody, establishing relationships, you would be, far more, returning than being pugilistic all the time. So I graduated law school, and my dream had always start, a nonprofit. And because I was, working on a lot of, legislations that would, benefit immigrants, the nonprofit, it became like a gift. And it was just the beginning of, a beautiful thing. And, right now, we're able to actually help immigrants all over the place, across the country, in other countries as well. So it's, that's me.
Great, thank you, Bruno. Jean, how about you?
Thank you. Good evening to everyone. My name is Hakuzimana, but they call me Gene, so I'm used to that. So sometimes they, what do I call you? So you say whatever comes quickly.
So for me, it's a nice rhythmic name, Jean Hakuzimana. It fits, So just make sure people got the full thing and get sort of the rhythm going. They'll get there.
Yeah, I think it's giving people hard time for no reason. So if Gene comes quickly, use it. Otherwise, I will be fighting with it until, because, So I came in this country in 2018. That's literally 5 years. And my first stop was in Maine. But when I came, I was a journalist in Rwanda. And as a guy who was listening to news, when I arrived in Maine, the language was harsh against immigrants by the governor. And I was, maybe this is not the place I would be living in. So then I tried to search around without going far away, because I couldn't move far. I said, okay, New Hampshire, maybe it's moderate. So that's when I moved to New Hampshire after 6 months in Maine. And from there, I started my life in New Hampshire. I'm a father, I have 4 kids and my wife. And when I came in New Hampshire, I was yet to start working because I didn't have the work permit. And I have to wait for some other few months to get my work permit. But back in Rwanda, back in Africa, I worked as a journalist. I also worked as an international expert within the United Nations. And coming here, by the shift that I was experiencing was very hard to stay for some months without working and without providing for your family. That was an issue for me. I think it took some toll on my mental being to wait that long. And when I found the first job, that was to work in concrete precast materials. And I was very motivated in the morning, but when I arrived there, the job was tough. You had to carry those heavy stuff, and I was not used to that. I'm not denigrating the job by any means. It's a good job, but I was not prepared for that. I was reminding myself using the computer, Outlook stuff, typing stuff, and then you have to carry the rebars, 5, and I was, wow, that's tough. So I spent there 1 month, and I slept. In the morning, I didn't go back. And my wife was, why don't you go back to her? I will not go back because I can't. My back was giving me the pain. And I remember the supervisor telling me, you guys, do you understand English? And I was, maybe I don't. And you can imagine why. In the company, the language that was used was F language, you know? Give me the F hammer, give me the F rebar. And I was not used to F language. And the guy was, do you understand English? I said, yes, I do, but I don't understand your English, please. Because I'm a Christian, so I couldn't, use those words. So after 1 month, I didn't stay. And luckily, I saw an online job that was trending, and it was becoming a case manager for refugee resettlement. Then I applied, and I was retained after 2 weeks, just because I could speak more than 2 languages, and that was very needed. So I started working to help immigrants, refugees who are coming in the USA, from Africa, from Asia, and I did that for 3 years within a Century Care Alliance. They work in New Hampshire and Massachusetts, and with that experience, I sometimes say, hey, I'm like a general. I helped an immigrant from Syria, from Rohingya, from Afghanistan, someone from Ukraine, someone from Congo. I was like, wow, that's very encouraging to drive those cats from Walmart buying foods to help them hanging curtains for the new apartments for them, for the Afghan evacuees. That was one of the great experiences that I remember that has energized my being. But also in the between, I also worked on my professional background. I realized that immigrants or new arrivals, they don't have that much capacity to understand what's going on here. So they need a medium, they need channels to understand what's going on. That's when I joined Jamba Africa, which is a newspaper that is publishing in 5 languages and plus. And then we have podcasts, we have video programming, just to help immigrants to understand the new life in Maine. We're going to start something in New Hampshire, of course. But that was also another experience until recently that I decided to start a company that is called New Hampshire SONGA, or New Hampshire Move, with a brand that says, let's move together. Let's organize moving together conversations. Because there is a host community, there is an arriving community, so they need to move together in a way. So that's the vision I'm having for New Hampshire, and it's going to work on different ways: workforce, education, health, how people can move together by understanding one another. So briefly, that's all right. It's a lot, but sorry.
No, that's great. Love hearing people's stories and how you came to be where you are. I also did not realize that the F word was playing a role in both of your lives sort of paths, but here we are. Another thing that connects the two of you, sort of independent of each other, is your interest and willingness to create. So, Jean, you just spoke about New Hampshire SONGA. Bruno, you've been instrumental in the New Hampshire Brazil Council. Can you talk about why it was so important for both of you to create something that was connecting communities, that was helping to build sort of that feeling of welcoming for the people that you've worked with?
Yeah, I can start. Yeah. So I think last year I was on morning edition at NHPR, and the gentleman called Rick Ganley, he asked me, what do you think immigrants need when they arrive? And I was, yes, the first impression when you meet a guy who arrives, it's that maybe this guy needs winter crops. That's one. Or he needs meat and gloves and everything like that, food, pantry, where they are. But I was telling the morning edition journalist that those guys, they need more than that. They need a special accommodation. They need to be taken care in mental health. They need to be given opportunity in terms of civic engagement. They need to have a space to realize their dreams. It's beyond the basic needs. So they have ambitions. They can become politicians. So they can contribute to any level of this fabric. So that was one of the feeling that I had from the beginning. So I was lucky to move here with some skills. And when I arrived here, I went to do community development graduate school. And from that, I have a vision to push forward people's dreams, people's success. So that's the feeling that I have, and I want to realize that through that company that I created.
Yeah, to me, it was personal experience. So I grew up, like in Brazil. It was, like a very tough, like environment, and and I was, the tough guy. Like, oh yeah, like nothing shakes me. And and I have seen, like many things that, like most people, like hadn't seen. For instance, like a guy, like on the street over, got shot, like in the head with a 12 gauge. He's, like in Brazil, you cut, in half, and essentially, like his head exploded. Like I saw a guy who got both of, like his legs, cut down with a chainsaw. One of my, like girls that I dated, the drug dealer, he he tied his legs, put him behind a motorcycle and drove and rode around, the whole neighborhood. And, like he was, like bare skin. And, he died. So, so things like that, like on like essentially, like weekly, sometimes, like monthly, sometimes weekly basis. And then, like I come here, but like you get numb to it. Like you get numb to it. It's crazy. And then, like you get here, like, oh, that's not normal. That's not normal. And then one night I came, I came home, from work. It was, like a pouring night. And then for the first time I started praying, to God. I never believed in anything. I sat in my driveway, I started praying, to God, to use me as a tool in His work. And, I can essentially, after that prayer, everything started going wrong. and I was like, wow, that's crazy. That's not, like what I prayed for, but, but in a way, like I knew that He was polishing me, to, do what I asked Him to do, be a tool, like in His work. And, like, and essentially, like a week later, I lost my license. 2 weeks after that, I got evicted. And then I got fired together. And I couldn't find any jobs, like anywhere. And it was like a time that you could find a job anywhere, even Wendy's. I used to work in restaurants, like I brought my application to Wendy's. She said, oh yeah, you have the experience, but I'm not gonna hire you. So like literally everything, imagine, like everything. But I knew, again, it was, like a polishing, like process. And, and essentially, it was, like the time at the end of my high school that I already knew what I wanted to do, that, like I wanted to become an attorney. And essentially, I was, like sleeping in the trunk of my car, like at the end of, like high school, and then, summer, and in the summer I got, like a scholarship at UNH to do, like an English summer, like class, and my English was like horrible. So you guys have an idea, so when I came here, a lot of people said, like Americans, they're very rude. And that was, the thing that I had in my mind. So one day I was at Market Basket, and I came up to this, to this lady. She was probably like 70 something. And then I came up to her and I said, "What up, dog? Where is the coffee?" And like she looked at me, and I was like, "Wow, that's so true." Because I had no idea, that like "what up, dog" meant. Because that's like what I heard, from the people I surrounded with. so so it was kind of crazy, and I would go to UNH, like Manchester, and all of these things going wrong, and that was the beginning of something. And I was like, okay, that was when the dream of starting a nonprofit, that I would make sure that nobody would go through the same things that I did.
That's great. Thank you for sharing both those experiences. One of the themes that I hear coming through this conversation is the importance of work, the importance of jobs. You both came here at different points in your life, but had some similar experiences, it sounds like, around finding work, keeping work, and being able to support yourself and your families. Can you talk about some of the experiences that you've had, as well as the people that you work with, in terms of those challenges and those policies that are in place currently that make it difficult for someone who does come here to find that initial job that will set them up for success as they continue in their careers? Bruno, I want to start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and especially right now, the job market, there's not really people to work, and that's the main complaint that I hear from friends who own companies, from chambers of commerce, people who call me almost on a daily basis, that they want to apply for workers to come work for them because they're struggling. They cannot take jobs because they don't have people to work for them. So it's very cumbersome, and it's very restrictive. In a way, I understand the policy, especially if you are applying for a a business visa, for example, a work visa. You have to go through a certification through the Department of Labor that the wage you are paying the person is an equivalent wage that it is the job market in your area, and that you're not taking away jobs from U.S. citizens who are permanent residents. But it becomes so restrictive to the point that you have all of these, and it's business 101, right? Supply and demand. You have all these demand of of work, of labor, but there's no supply, and that's where we should start pondering what's wrong here. Is there something that needs to be changed? Because immigration laws, the last time they were changed were well over 30 years ago, and how many presidents have we gotten for the past 30 years? How many things have happened in the past 30 years? Everything changes except the law.
Thank you. That's a tough question.
Well, as I told you in the podcast, I don't like easy questions. You should be prepared for this.
Okay, I am. Well, when I came here, I started working with the company that I mentioned, and I was not successful, but at least I enjoyed the few skills that I got to make rebars, to arrange them, to put concrete, and to make top slabs or best slabs. I remember those notions, and I was, wow, I'm getting something, but the energy was not the one I had. So I went to work with refugees because, first of all, of my linguistic abilities, because I could speak French, Swahili, Kinyarwanda, and some English. So that has given me a chance to see how the market was for refugees and new arrivals. So it's a little bit challenging. People, they are coming, sometimes they have not even had elementary education, yet they want job. Job is the essential part of this life in America. If you don't have job, you have nothing. So I'm grateful for the companies that have find a way to accommodate those guys, refugees from Congo, from Asia, especially in manufacturing. That's where they find most of the essential jobs. And but again, the issue of English speaking, it comes again to hurt those very people. Sometimes the supervisor would be complaining that he can't understand or he can't communicate with those guys. And we've been helping sometimes to put a guy who can understand literally some English in the middle of a team, just to help the team in their language. I remember we did that in Walmart. Someone who understands better can help the other one who can't understand even a hi. So that's good, but it's not durable. It's not going to be there for long. When there is a recession, those are the very guys to be taken out. That's number one. Number two, for people who come in and who have some skills, I can put myself in that category. I came with a college degree in journalism. It's also hard to integrate the market because the bias, you are always in this disadvantaged position. So you're behind any guy who can apply, who is not a refugee. So I tried hard to find some other jobs. I couldn't succeed until I say, let me go back to college. Let me do some stuff again. I did it, but again, the issue continued. I tried again and again with a graduate degree, but I can tell you that I've been working for $70 an hour after paying my whole school from the overnight shift that I was working in Crotched Mountain. So it's a little bit different. There is always a gap. There is always a disadvantage point that you need to cover a lot of miles to get on the same point with other people. And that's the reason why I'm working on bridging the gaps through the company that I created. My first conference will be immigrants in New Hampshire workforce. That's the debate I want to bring in the room so that people can have genuine conversation around it.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty clear that as the American population, native-born population, continues to age, the only reason why our population continues to grow is because we do welcome so many immigrants to our country. Bruno, you talked a little bit about sort of the H-1B visas, which are those work visas where you have to indicate that there is no one else in America who is able to do that. There has been some national level conversation, although I don't know how serious it is, about ending that program. Same with J-1s, same with seasonal workers. What value do these visas provide to the U.S. economy? These people coming, obviously there are people behind each one of those numbers. What can you say about sort of the reason why these programs are important to continue? And should we look at keeping them the same, expanding them, contracting them? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, in my opinion, definitely expand. There's definitely a big need for expansion. And in a way, we are all immigrants here. Children of immigrants, grandchildren of immigrants, great-grandchildren of immigrants, we're all, like immigrants here. And, if you go to, like any restaurant, like a Hampton Beach, for example, you have 90% chance that one of the waiters or the waitresses, that will, help you, they are from a different country. And there is, especially now, as I mentioned, like a shortage, like on labor. It's more detrimental than ever. The need of a change of, like policy, because even in Concord, right after the pandemic, that the federal government, put a stop on, exchange visas. And the Concord, I forgot the name of the festival, but there is a yearly Concord festival, a carnival, with Ferris wheels and all of the fun stuff that you guys all enjoy. And essentially, they couldn't hire any foreign workers because there was a stop on it. And essentially, for the first year in over 30 years, the festival didn't happen. So that's how detrimental it is. And not having an expansion on skilled workers coming to the United States to work on technology and in the health field. It's a loss to all of us at the end. To me, if I have to go to the hospital, there is no person who understands, a disease that, someone, I don't know, in India, for example, might understand. It's just, it's just bad.
Jim, anything to add to that?
Yeah, my reflection was, if we stop that, will we be able to enjoy the Chinese food again? So that was in my mind. It's delicious, I have to admit. So, but my analysis goes even beyond the skilled workers, even the basic workers that we have. If you go to health sector, you're gonna find that, wow, there is a big number of immigrants who are working to uplift that area of health. If you go to home cares, you're gonna find a big number of guys from Africa, from Asia, who are working hard. So I say that I worked in Crotched Mountain. We managed the house. I remember that most of 90%, they were immigrants from Nepal, from Africa, and we were really helping those young guys who need help. So if you want to play politics around that, the numbers don't lie. We need people, and people are helpful to this state. And I've got some CEOs as a journalist who came forward courageously, and then they told me, hey, if we couldn't find those guys, immigrants, our companies would have shut down. They were so courageous to tell me that on record. So that's it's a done debate.
Yeah. Well, and one of the most important stats that I think relates to this is there are about 80,000 H-1B visas available every year, and over 200,000 applications every year. So that just goes to show the amount of need there is out there if these companies are certifying that they are unable to find people to do the jobs elsewhere. All right, we're about a little over halfway through our conversation, so I'd like to give the audience a chance. I'm pulling up our online questions as well. So, anyone have a question for our panelists, or shall I jump into the online questions? All right, Jack, let me.
A question to both. Oh, sorry. A question to both of you. Was there a community from Brazil and from your country already here where you kind of targeted where you were going to go and received support and help from that community, or were you on your own?
There was a Brazilian community when I arrived in Nashua. It was fairly like a small community and very close community, and and everybody lived in the shadows. And even though I came with a green card, my mentality has had always been if I see a police officer I'll panic because they might deport me. and that's not even their job. But that was the mentality, when I arrived, and and essentially yes, some of the folks, and that's how I was able to get some jobs here, some jobs there. You always know someone who knows someone, you keep on going. But the support is very limited, and with a lot of misconceptions.
Yeah, it's not that you have a bigger community, but you can find a friend, you can find someone in extra mile, but you have to call them brothers and sisters because you are in a foreign land. So there is no bigger community, but we've got some friends, some old referrals from college in Rwanda, so they are.
Okay, well, hello to Jeanette and Soul Floor Samba online, saying hello to Bruno in particular. But we do have a question here from Matt. He'd like to know, Bruno, you've talked a little bit about your experiences with police. Jean, I'm sure you've had your own experiences as well. Can you talk a little bit about the immigrant experience with police here in New Hampshire? From your own personal experiences and from what you've heard from the people you work with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, so I used to, hate, the police, really. And then, when I started, shifting, the way, of thinking, I started building a relationship with them, having meetings with chiefs of police, across the state, realizing that they were humans, and for the first time I was like, wow, it was like a mind-blowing experience. The first time I sat down and talked to a police chief. And and him telling me the stories when he was a rookie, some of the fears that he had, and when you stop, you pull someone over, you don't know who that person is, if the identity they're giving you is fake, if it's not from the state you're in. If you have a driver's license from Florida, for example, at that time there wasn't an integrated system, so you couldn't really tell. And they saying that I don't know if that guy just committed a crime, if he just had killed someone, if he's a psychopath, and and I just pull him over, and I might not even come back home. And I'm like, wow, that's really, crazy. That was, incredible. And from that conversation, I started building up on that, having meetings with other chiefs, other law enforcement agents, and it was and I found a very similar pattern, and and I started working with them, on educating about the immigrant community, how police officers are perceived, in our home countries, in Brazil, for example, they stop anyone at any time, the officers, they kick you, they slap you in the face. Some of my friends, one of my friends lost all of his teeth, literally, from punches, from police officers, and zero accountability. And teaching them, sharing with them, how it is, in our culture, and vice versa, having them, sharing, their perspective to our community as well, and coming, to a common ground. to the point where, we would bring 20 people, to different, police departments, and they would be like scared to death, going in, and, at the end of the meeting, leaving, like hugging, the police chief. And, it's just amazing, to see that. And it's, an ongoing work, and, and from that, we just, build up. And I'm not saying that, all police officers, are good, because we know, there are some, bad police officers. And that's the beauty of it. When, we work together, we can, identify, and keep, an eye out on, these bad police officers. And, the same as lawyers. There are some, I hate lawyers, actually.
Thank you. When I was 8 years, a genocide happened in my country, so I saw it happening in front of my eyes. Wars happened in Africa. I've seen quite some. I worked in villages ravaged by Boko Haram. I was there, so I saw what a gun can do, and I hate a gun. So whenever I see someone carrying a gun, I feel, wow, what's this? So, but I'm grateful to the police in New Hampshire. They are, so far, I've never had any bad experience with police. Maybe it's because I fear a lot, I don't know. But at least from my analysis as a media guy who reads news, who looks around and compare the states and the cities, I really applaud the police in New Hampshire. They are good guys, according to me and to what I've seen.
Great, yeah. Through our visitor program, we've taken a number of groups to meet with the state police over the years, and we always loved hearing their stories of outreach to communities here in the state to better learn from each other. Specifically, one of their first outreaches was to the Congolese community, and they found out that kids were running away from the police here in New Hampshire, not because they had done something wrong, but because they were absolutely terrified of police because of how the police acted in their countries. Kids or people from these communities were not looking at police officers in the eyes because that's a sign of disrespect in other cultures. So it was a great opportunity for them to learn and share and to build relationships. So kudos to the state police at the very least for leading that work. Okay, we also have a question here from Katie. She would like to hear a little bit more about some of the policy challenges that immigrants face when they move to New Hampshire. And Bruno, I know we've talked about the driver's license issue, so maybe we can start there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So when we think about immigration is federal law. So is it, like it is within the purview of the federal government to dictate how immigration law goes. However, there are certain things that, like states do have the power under the 10th Amendment, the policing power, to govern. Like the biggest challenge that immigrants face today in New Hampshire is not having a driver's license. Like we think, like a driver's license. I mean, you only think about your driver's license like when you have to apply for them. Like unless you drive really fast and you get pulled over all the time, don't do it. And it's something that you don't really think about it, like much. But it is a crucial piece of plastic to a lot of people who come here, because when they bring their kids to school, they don't know if they're gonna be like arrested and like be within like ISIS like radar So ICE is the immigration police, essentially. But it's not really police because they're under the executive branch. They like to say they're police, but they're not. And it's very sensitive. And one of the things that that I deal a lot is is the pressure that parents face, and they pass it on to their kids because of that fear. If they get caught driving, they're gonna get detained, and after they leave, they're gonna go to court. And we had a history in recent years where ICE would go to some of the courts across the state, and they would wait for people to get out and put them in removal proceedings, and can send them back. And some of the times, the kids would be hanging over here with friends, and it would be chaotic. And it's a mental trauma, and we're dealing a lot with kids suffering from post-traumatic distress because of the ongoing fear that they live on a day-to-day. So that's just one thing. Every year we have anti-immigration legislation that comes on. And most of the time we're able to defeat them, but this past year they're getting really far, so and it is concerning, it is very concerning because we're talking about families here, we're talking about real people, not just a number, it's real people.
Yeah, from my perspective, the challenges are enormous, and you can number them from the general services, from housing, child care, so those are general to everyone, but when they come to immigrants, they become even worse because they are always below the ladder. I can't tell you how much I failed to pay the child care for my son because of the dollar amount that is needed. So it's, from the general perspective, enormous. Housing is an issue, even generally. But also, I can't tell you how much times my coffee, the coffee that I ordered came, and it was not the one that I ordered. So I asked the hot latte, then they gave me a coffee. So a black coffee, then I was, what's going on? So the question is, the New Hampshire society or community, I fear that it's uninformed about immigrants. And that's a challenge if you take into perspective, because it will direct or dictate the way you act vis-a-vis immigrants. If you are not informed, and if you're not willing to be informed, you will act in a way that will not be helpful. So we lack shelters, there is lack of social support for those who came in New Hampshire, especially who are not green card holders or refugees who come through the Immigration Refugee Act. If you come as undocumented, if you come as an asylum seeker, so you are to be on your own in New Hampshire. Whereas in some states, you're gonna find some good way to thrive.
Okay, we have a question here from Soulfloor Samba online. How do your organizations envision amplifying the pipelines of your communities into jobs that require higher education specifically?
Yeah, so that is something that I have worked with, many, organizations, as a matter of fact, in the past, 2 years, and we're, being very, successful. And, one of the things that, we talk about is, systemic discrimination. It's not really, discrimination, but, but it is. Like it would keep, like someone out, like out of a job that, they would probably be more qualified with, someone that has, like a degree. Like in like in the United States, that piece of paper is important. But that's something that, like we have been having, conversations with, like organizations, to essentially, like reflect, like on their employees, the community that, that they serve. So people can feel, like more comfortable, and people can feel more welcome. And like, and it has been, like working, so far.
Great.
Yeah, through NH SONGA, which is New Hampshire Moves, the vision that I have is to bring the conversation in the room, to bring two communities in the room, immigrants and non-immigrants, but in a way of crafting a common vision together. And that's why I'm organizing the conference, Immigrants in New Hampshire Workforce, in November 15th. So I want CEOs to sit in the same room with immigrants, human resources, just to learn, number one, who are the immigrants? What type of immigrants we have? Literally nobody even knows who are here. So what are their skills? What are the culture they came from? So how can we accommodate them in the workplace? There are some tiny nuggets that people can get and benefits from that. So that's the vision that I'm having. But also I want to bring on the table the contribution of immigrants in this state's economy. Because when you don't have facts, you start believing in nonsense. But if you understand facts, then you can change your mind. So that's the vision I'm turning around, bringing the room from workforce to education to health, but two people in the same room to have genuine conversations.
Bill, you had a question?
Thank you. This is touched on a little bit earlier, but I'd like to hear some more about your experience with the children of the immigrants, because they're often sitting, they don't belong back in the old country, they're not at home there, they may not feel yet at home here. What have you experienced seeing that are particularly relevant to the children of the immigrants?
Yeah, Remstad. I don't know how many kids you have, but I have 4, so let's jump on that quickly. So the gap is huge and it's tough. So it's an open conflict, if I may say, between parents and kids, especially for parents who came here without any formal education. They get lost in the middle of this. So kids behave like Americans. They feel Americanized, empowered, which is great. But again, when you go to culture shock, you come back to hurt your mom or to be in conflict with your mom. Your mom wants to have that super authority that our parents had on us. And then you say, I'm going to call the police. You're harassing me. My daughter was in pre-K. He was reading something called Sophia book, kind of. And then she came home, we were just discussing, and she said, hey, Dad, you're hurting my feelings. What's this? That was my first year in America. Come on, a tiny girl, 3 years? You're hurting my feelings. What are your feelings? Then I start unpacking whatever she brought from school. I can't hurt your feelings. I'm the most precious protector that you ever had. So I'm here to help you to move on. So it's like they come home, you unpack, you correct, you rebuke. I'm using the Bible language. So that you can feel at least that you have the parental authority over your kids. Otherwise, some have lost that authority completely.
Yeah, and like my experience, I don't have kids. I have a puppy. Her name is Perla. She's lovely. But like with children in general, the majority of the population that I deal with, they are undocumented. So essentially, most of them, they came with a visa and they overstayed, and some of them crossed the border. And especially, like with the ones that, cross the border, like over 90% of them are suffering from, post-traumatic distress, because it's one of these misconceptions, that I said, that essentially, if you get pulled over by, the police, you're gonna get deported. But, but that's not true anymore, because of the work that, like many people, there are many people that, like work with this, have worked, with different police departments, so that, like would not happen. But unfortunately, that's still the belief, and, and it's hard sometimes. Like even, like immigrants who live in Massachusetts, they don't come to, to New Hampshire. Even like my office, they prefer doing, even if they live in like in Lowell, 20 minutes, they prefer, doing like video, like instead of, coming to my office, which is like an exit 1, like in Nashua, and right next to the bridge. Because, like of that fear, and that fear, like passes along, and I'm actually seeing not just the children, but the parents, because I have a holistic approach, to my clients. And, I can, instead of, doing a 1 hour consultation, sometimes, like my consultation takes like 4 hours, because, like we start talking about, like life, like random things, and, like, and when I realize, it's been like 4 hours. And, like, and the majority of them, they feel comfortable, to connect and, can share. I have a lot of clients right now that, if they're not depressed, their kids are depressed. And that's the majority of them. And, like, and it's, like, it's sad. It's, like, very sad. Because, like, at the end of the day, how you don't take, that home with you.
Yeah, really tough. And something that hopefully fewer and fewer children have to go through as time goes on. Speaking of time, we are almost at time. Jane, you want a question?
I do.
Okay.
Oh,
Just for our online audiences.
Jane Charlesworth. And it's been in the news recently of the number of immigrants that have been bused into New York City, including 20,000 children who need to go to school. Amongst their parents, do you go around and ask who here is a teacher that can come into our system and teach these 20,000 children? There must be teachers amongst the adults. How does that work? This was on top of 15,000 children that entered the New York school system the year before. So if we're talking about the children, we should really talk about the capable adults that are coming as their parents, who maybe we could say, so how many parents here are teachers? And yeah, they need to speak English. What would you do if you were the mayor of New York?
Yeah, no, and it's, like it's really tough, because, like locally, you cannot really, give, like a job to someone who is not allowed to, to work in the United States. And, like, and that's, like, it becomes, like a vicious, like cycle, because it's like where, like I mentioned, the need of, like an immigration reform, because it affects, like everything. And without, like an immigration reform, like we don't have, the capacity to provide, the services, or to even, like even housing. So, like in Nashua, the unoccupancy rate is 0.4%. I mean, there's like pretty much like nothing, like available. So it becomes, like a very big problem. So 2 years ago, there was, like a high influx of, like Brazilians, crossing the border and going to Massachusetts. And they were living, like on the streets because not even the churches, could take more people because, like of, the fire marshals, like were on top of them. They were like at over capacity, and that was, they were not even fit to be, like a shelter. And it becomes, like a big, like snowball, because, like even if you are, like a teacher, like a nurse, like back in your country, you cannot really, even if you are, like a hairdresser, back in your country, you cannot, practice here. You cannot become, like a hairdresser here. So, and I have met, like judges, who became mechanics here, attorneys, as house cleaners, and, and then, like attorneys too, engineers, like working, like in construction. It just becomes, like a big, like snowball. Because at the end of the day, immigration is a federal law, and like if the state decides, oh yeah, we're gonna like hire these parents who were teachers in their home countries, they get sued by the federal government.
And it gets to credentialing as well. So you come here with experience as a teacher or as a nurse or a psychologist, and these are things that we really need in our society. There are shortages of staffing, but your credential is not recognized here. It's even a problem moving across states because every state has their own credentialing. My wife is a nurse, and her license would work in like 10 or 15 states, but if she moved to one state that does not accept her credential, she can't work there until she gets re-credentialed. So it's another challenge in all of this is even if they do have the ability to work under whatever status they arrived in, their credential is probably not recognized by the state, and so that's something that needs to be.
But it's not like your wife. Your wife is trained, so her credentials are recognized.
Yes.
That's just paperwork. None of these other credentials. I'm a physician. I've hired a lot of folks. Physicians have to be retrained.
Right.
If they come here from another country, they have to basically go back through training.
Back to school.
Not to school. They're not to school. But they have to do the residency. And they have to be retrained as if they had no experience.
But I think it's kind of national or a debate that is going around. If you want to go by importance, I believe we are losing in terms of economy or money for stability or economy development. Because those folks, I know some states are pushing some laws to allow doctors, for example, to just pass the exam and you start practicing. Because the medicine, most of the books, they are universal. So you are trained through the books that were developed in America when you are in Rwanda. And when you come here, you can't practice just because of that protectionism. But if you can overcome that slightly and let people do some internship as others, those guys, they are audacious. They've been working even without materials sophisticated like the one we have here, but they did. We've been surviving because of them in our countries. So the medicine or the math, the physics, they're almost the same. So we lose.
And for the record, I like physicians.
All right, so no lawyers, but yes to physicians. Okay. All right. Well, we are about at a little over time, but I would be remiss if I didn't end with this question. John, you mentioned that the people of New Hampshire, in your experience, are unaware of the communities that are here and what it means to be an immigrant in New Hampshire. So just a final thought from both of you on what you would like the people of New Hampshire to be aware of as it comes to our immigrant neighbors, our new American neighbors, and how they interact in our society.
Thank you so much. I've had the chance to plant, let me use the word, to plant immigrants in this state. So I've had families in Nashua, I have family in Manchester, I've helped families in Concord. I had also a single family in Portsmouth from Afghanistan. So those folks, they are thriving, they are working, they are helping their families, but also helping the state to develop. So they are good neighbors, they have manners, they have ways of life, they are good, they have culture. So they are humans like other humans. So that's the one thing that I can say.
Yeah, I mean, like the only bad experience that that I have is actually like with the legislature, when they bring like anti immigration laws. Some of them like we try to say you cannot really do that. It's like within the power of the federal government. So. But but they keep like I was actually talking to Leo, the guy behind the camera right there, like in the car, that like sometimes like it becomes like frustrating. Like an example is the driver's license, like legislation like we've been working on. There are a lot of people involved in this, and like the first year they said, oh yeah, but then if they get the driver's license, they can vote. And then we give them a copy of the voting application, like in which shows that like you have to check a box, certifying that you must be a U.S. citizen in order to vote. Not even if you're a permanent resident with a green card, you can vote in New Hampshire. And in the history of New Hampshire, we never had like an immigrant, trying to, to vote, like in any elections. Never ever we had, that issue. And then, the next year, they say the same thing. And we're like, oh, but, remember last year? Like here it is again. And then the next year, like the same thing. And we're like, no, you must be playing, because there is no freaking way you can be saying the same thing over and over and over again, like for like 4 years. I mean, your record is broken. I mean, there's something, there's something crazy. Because even if you are, if you don't agree with something, like say it. That's fine. Like I don't agree. But coming up, like with the same thing over and over again, it is just like weird. It is just like weird, and like and unfortunate, because I mean we all don't agree on the same things, but I'm sure we can all have like a decent conversation. Oh, okay, I think this way. Be respectful, but it's it's crazy. To me, it's just crazy.
All right, well, thank you both for joining us here tonight. I've really appreciated the conversation. The hour for me, or hour and 15 at this point, has really flown by. Thank you to our audiences for joining us both in person and online. Some really great conversation. I hope you're coming away from tonight's effort with a bit better understanding of the immigrant experience here in New Hampshire, some of the policies that underlie that, and to recognize that this is not the end of the conversation, but the start. So please continue to engage in these conversations. We do have 2 more in this series coming up, one on October 11th, and the other on November 9th. That should be up on our website shortly, so please do sign up. We love having these conversations. We love having you here in person. We love having our online audiences. Thank you again to Fulbright for helping us to provide some snacks and some coffee here today. We hope you've enjoyed yourselves, and we hope to see you again real soon. Thanks so much.